Hi, this is Martin.
This is Shiki.
Today we will be talking about Donald Judd.
Yes, I've seen two shows of Judd recently. The first one we saw was in Paris, right, in October.
Yeah, that was a show brought together by Mr. Lawrence Van Hagen. It was a quite small but quite lovely show in an old Parisian flat overseeing the Champs-Élysées. I remember, in typical decadent fashion, as you would expect from Lawrence, black caviar was served at the opening and champagne. It was a rather lovely affair. And of course the works were just quite stunning in this really grand, almost baroque environment, because they seem to really be quite the opposite of this kind of very baroque. There's something quite monumental and just very powerful in its sheer simplicity looking at these works.
Yes, the location was really rather nice, and it was in a flat, right?
Yeah.
It's in a basically luxurious flat, but they've removed all of the actual furniture and everything, emptied out the flat completely, and had the Donald Judd in there instead, which like you said, it's a very interesting conversation, but also I thought it was quite an intriguing contrast to what I saw with the Judd Foundation, his own building that he's bought, and
he paid very little for it. It's in Chelsea, you said, or what?
Yes, in New York, exactly, in number 101 Spring Street. So it's basically this 5-story building in Chelsea, and no, not in Chelsea, no, in Tribeca, in Soho.
Tribeca, okay.
Soho.
Yeah.
And Judd has turned this whole 5-story building into various different multifunctional spaces for himself, and therein where he would also place his own work and his furniture and also some of his own collection in the space. And it's a very curated and designed space.
Yeah. So in a way you think perhaps the connecting Judd's work to life and like the lived environment is a very natural thing, because
think so.
It was not in some white cube gallery.
Yeah, exactly.
And frankly, I think in a more like living space, I think the works might even come across as far more crass than, like a white cube spaces. They're already, quite sterile,
minimal,
quasi-industrial spaces, and the very fabric and language of Donald Judd's works is also industrial. So maybe, that's an interesting point. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No. Yeah, exactly. So I thought this. So I think this reference to this living space, livid space, is also what Judd was very much interested in. Like including also his later moving to Marfa and buying all of these buildings, and he would create not only studios, exhibition spaces, but also living spaces with in Marfa as well. So one thing I thought very interesting going to see his foundation in New York is that the guiding person told us that how nothing in this space, none of the objects or furniture or artworks, unless it's hanging on the wall, nothing else is put against the wall. Everything, like the bed is at the center of the space, and the table, the chairs, like nothing you would have it like
interesting
put against the wall. And how like also Judd's children, when they grew up, they also still have this habit of placing all of their furniture sort of float like kind of in the center of the room and not leaning against the wall.
And why is that? I mean, truly you need a lot of space to live like that, because
yeah,
frankly the reason I put my bed in my corner is that my room is bloody small, and
I mean, it can still be in the corner, but it won't be against the wall.
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
you leave like like some breathing space.
Yeah,
It almost feels like. Yeah. Also, yeah.
What does that mean? Is it a way of honoring the objects?
I think
Because there's an implication that you can look at it from all directions without having to move it, or
yeah, I think so. Probably that's probably one of the reasons. And I think you create in a way more conversation and more relationship between the space and the object.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I thought that it was quite striking, Lawrence show with so he had a quite historical work with the wooden box.
Yeah, so he had one large wooden box. I'd say, how big was it? It would have been probably a bit more than probably 1.5 meters by 1.5 meters by 1 meter in height.
Yeah.
And it was wooden. Which wood was it? It had a nice texture to it. It had like a kind of pattern, but it and then in the inside on the bottom it was painted in his distinctive cadmium red.
Plywood, Douglas fir plywood.
Yeah, Douglas fir plywood. Yeah. So it was made with Douglas fir plywood, and so on the outside you had this natural wooden finish. And it interacted quite interestingly with the light. I mean, I suppose there's something almost golden about the wood. And yeah, the inside was red, and it
Yeah, I mean, also how it was placed in the room. It was, I mean, it's a Parisian apartment. It's not very big, and I think it was like in one of the library room or something.
Yeah, and studies. It was in the center of it.
Yeah, it was right in the center of the room, and you kind of just have to squeeze in and walk around.
Yeah.
This rigid, well, in a way rigid in comparison to the rest of the room. This wooden box in the middle.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I think that sort of experience that it creates by having that box in the room, it was quite interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean it's quite interesting. And but what do you think? I mean, in a way, they're quite banal objects. I mean, it's a box of wood. You know what's so special? I mean, even also his stacks. I mean, it's produced perhaps in a way that it's more sophisticated than for mass-produced items like the welding. Everything is far more delicate than, and there's a different standard of perfection because he's an artist and not an industrial manufacturer. But what's the interest of such objects, to put it bluntly?
I mean, to introduce Donald Judd's process of making works a little bit. So the only thing that he's really handmade were, well, his early paintings, and so I think his first 1 or 2 shows where he kind of worked with his dad and made these wooden objects and relief paintings.
Yeah, yeah.
So those are really the only things
and also the wooden silk screens. I mean, it's kind of like a relief painting, but it also functioned as the woodblock for a silk screen.
Yeah,
I mean, a woodblock screen. What am I saying?
Yeah. Yeah. So only those works that he made kind of involved himself. So afterwards, all of these metal boxes then manufactured by a manufacturer.
Yeah.
So someone he really liked using and worked very closely together was the Bernstein brothers in New York from very early on in the 60s.
But he only worked with them, right? I mean,
yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think he also worked with other people for like other like larger projects
every work,
elsewhere.
I mean, I suppose that's how you can tell if it's a fake or if it's not. That all of his sculptures, they have a Bernstein number, and it's usually embossed in the back of a stack of and it's quite crucial to have that. I mean, if you don't have that, you have a problem.
Yeah, but I mean, also later on, he works with a different manufacturer.
Okay.
So the really late works from the 80s, he moved to Switzerland.
Okay.
And so he worked, also including his furnitures. They were all made by this called Lenny AG.
Okay,
company in
Lini AG.
Switzerland.
Okay,
Lini?
yeah.
So yeah, those are the two main manufacturers that
I see.
he's
Okay,
worked with.
interesting.
And yeah, so exactly, he doesn't really make these work himself, so he has someone very professional to do it for him. Even for his prints later on, he doesn't make the prints himself. He has some very professional printer to do it for him as well.
So what does that mean? Can all of us be an artist? I mean, I suppose, you know, he studied philosophy and started out as an art critic. I mean, does that, you know, what are my chances? I also studied philosophy.
I mean, I think indeed, like, this way of working really became sort of the beginning of how a lot of artists work now. Like, I think including like Jeff Koons or like Murakami, they don't make their sculptures. They're not barely involved in making of a lot of their art, right? Here they have someone much more professional do it for them, and they just come up with the idea and design and oversee the sort of manicular process of which color to choose and things like that. And also quite funny with Judd's, he obviously had also a process to first communicate with the Bernstein brothers when they first started working, like the factory's way of manufacturing things. At first it was just not too really to the standards, like they really had to, you know, like tweak like how perfect the seams needs to be, and what colors to use, how to finish the finish. Like it took like a while to really get it perfect. So it's definitely not like just a random ordinary manufacturing.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think they're all beautifully crafted objects.
Exactly.
I mean, and they're so sleek, and it in a way looks so familiar. Like if you look at a stack, you know, you'll easily be forgiven for thinking, oh, it's just a shelf.
I think there's rumors that, well, people say that some collectors do use them as shelves.
I'm
or
sure
their
that
kids
has
do use
happened,
them
that their
as
kids
shelves.
do at the very least.
Yes.
Well, life is tough. I mean, you know, I suppose there's also corrosion just by the natural environment. I mean, I've seen quite a few of his like brass works, but which just by dint of the moisture in the air, they would get like, you know, these little green spots of oxidization. And it, you know, you don't have to touch it for it to, you know, at least to deteriorate or lose some of its glimmer. Of course, you can repolish it and whatnot.
Yeah.
But anyway, go on.
Yeah, but what do you think about these objects? I mean, the one thing that Judd is also famous for is that he came up with this theory about specific objects. So his article was published in 1964. He's written about this idea that he's had about, that's called the specific objects, that his actually it wasn't really necessarily describing his own work, but he's describing a type of work that's neither painting nor sculpture, and they should be honored as objects, and they're honoring the objecthood of the object itself.
I suppose the difference between a painting or sculpture and a specific object would be that typically a sculpture or painting, it stands for something. I mean, there's this illusory quality. You look at a painting and it's a window into a different world, quite literally.
Yeah.
And so with a sculpture and a specific object, if I understand it correctly, it just is what it is. It just stands for what it is. It's, you know, it's a box. It's, you know, it's not a box into something else. It's not
representing a box. It is a box in a way.
Yeah. That's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
But do you think that this idea is really that original? I mean, I suppose... I mean, I'm trying to think of works that are three-dimensional, as in sculptures by, you know, the colloquial term, but that do not represent anything.
Yeah, I think also... I think there's also another element, is that a specific object as an artwork within the context of art, it's also something that is not utilitarian.
Yeah.
I mean, a box is a box.
Yeah.
Like, you use it as a box.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's also very. I think that distinction is really interesting because for me, I feel what I find particularly striking about the Judd work is that he uses all of these most familiar materials that now is like the most common thing we see in urban life, right?
Yeah.
Corrugated iron or copper or
Aluminium.
or
Yeah,
like
yeah,
acrylic
yeah.
glass and all of that. And he's used the most common form that you would see everywhere, a box, a rectangular or whatever box shape. And yet you clearly feel that it is not something to be used because it's not made in a way that is very functional.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't suggest that it can be used.
Yeah, that's interesting. Are you inclined? I mean, I suppose. I mean, I don't want to digress too much, but in fact, I am. I mean, I feel nowadays it's quite hard to come across contemporary sculptors who do work. I mean, like contemporary sculptors with big galleries that are successful. There aren't that many, and I think one of the reasons for it is that the market prefers paintings. You can stack them and yada yada yada. But I think one of the directions you've seen in sculpture has been sculptors who actually come from a design context, and you have this idea of speculative design, that you really create, you really have the method of a designer to create sculptures.
Yeah.
And they're not for use, hence they're not pieces of design. And I think there are quite a few artists that at least come from that background. I mean, at least to me, Marguerite Humeux is the first one that comes to mind because she studied design and not fine art. And I think just in the sheer finish of these works, they're conceptual first, and then you execute them somehow, but they're in a way using the methods of an industrial designer.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that Judd is a forefather to that, even though maybe the form is different. Obviously, Marguerite Humeux is all organic and what have you, and Judd is all quite monumental in its simplicity. But there's a connection between the two, perhaps.
Perhaps, yeah. And I think another connection for me would be that, like for me, the way that Judd has made these boxes and his whole life of work, I think it almost, when I see it almost feels like it's creating a totally different worldview. Like it's almost like futuristic in a way.
Yeah.
It's kind of creating this world where it's a style. It's creating an aesthetics.
Yeah.
And using the things that we already have, but he's managed to imagine it in a way that you feel like, wow, the world can look like this.
Yeah.
Like, so for me, like a lot of so the space that he's curated himself, like the foundation in New York, like it's a manifestation of that sort of worldview almost. So it's like so meticulous curated, and when you enter that space, and it feels so separate from the rest of New York, but also feel like but yet it still comes from all of the materials that New York has. And I think similarly with Marguerite Humeux is that like she uses all of these shapes and materials that is from nature and from in a way from nature, right? Like also beeswax and wood and all of those things. And then she's created this. I think it's like her whole thing is also about creating this alternative universe and history, right? This whether it's alienated.
I suppose there's an interest in speculating what our history could be like, because I suppose history typically is quite empirical. You look at traces, you look at bones, and I don't know what, but obviously there's a realm beyond that where it's not an empirical science, it's a more speculative inquiry or hypothesizing, and that's what she does really, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, but also it doesn't feel like it's history. It also feels quite futuristic. It just feels like a alternative universe kind of feeling, right?
Yeah.
It's like what the world could be.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's very amazing about these sculptures, and what sculpture feels particularly powerful in comparison to painting quite often, is that it actually creates objects that sort of create a world in a way. You can almost imagine that there's a world that can be looking like this.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I suppose...
Yeah, I mean, it was a big shame that you didn't get to see the Judd Foundation.
Yeah, I regret it.
Yes. Yeah, so we're in New York.
2 weeks ago?
1
week ago.
1 week ago? 1 week ago, yes.
Yeah.
And we're all very stunned by New York. We love it now, right?
It's okay.
It's okay. I thought you were positively surprised.
Positively surprised, but that's... but still, I mean, I prefer Hong Kong.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like after going to New York, I can really also see where all of this minimalism and Judd and Richard Serra, all of that aesthetic will come from.
Yeah, Judd didn't like the label minimalism. I mean, he didn't.
Yeah, no one liked the label minimalism. I don't think there's any minimal artist like the label minimalism.
But what did he say about that? Do you know? I mean, he rejected that label because, in a way, I mean, I don't know. I think for me the first thing that grips me when I see at a Judd work is I think there's something very sensual and poetic about it. Even you have these kind of like heavy-handed steel objects, but they often interestingly interact with light and color, and they're very well chosen, and there's a poetic beauty and subtlety in them.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, in a way, I think that these are works, they are maybe minimal in terms of the materials employed and whatnot, but they are maximal in affect. I think they're quite moving objects, the way they interact with light. I presume that's maybe one of the reasons why Judd would have rejected such a label.
Yeah, but I think minimalism is not really a movement that's anyway.
It's just a term that people put on people.
Yeah, I think just a generic, it's quite a generic term, a historical generic term in a way. No, but it's very interesting about the lighting that you said. So it's really intriguing that in the Judd Foundation, there's different lighting on every floor, and it's and how strong it is also is different. So like the first floor, it's exhibition space, it's just normal lights, and then when you enter the second floor, it's and when you enter the second floor, it's where it has a dining table and cooking area, and it's where they used to mingle and party and stuff. So they had just like raw light bulbs, and it's very weak light, so quite dim. And then when you enter the third floor, it's still the raw light bulbs. It's really strong light. And then when you go up to the top floor, it's there's no light at all apart from, so that's where the bedroom is. So there's only one tiny lamp that's next to the bed, and then it's just Dan Flavin.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy to think. So the Dan Flavin they had is this really big one that Flavin has specifically made for the space. So he's measured the space and how long it is, and goes like end to end, wall to wall. And so the light is so the room is it's a corner building, so it has a very big front of a row of windows. So that's where the Flavin is at the front of the building, that side. So you can also see the Flavin light from outside. And so he's just using it as like light, literally in the bedroom. So he has made turning the switch right next to his bed, so he can turn it on and off from his bed.
That's useful.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to sleep with a Dan Flavin glaring at your face.
No. Yeah, it's quite funny, I find.
That's good.
Yeah. Using flavor as a real light. That's good.
It's good, yeah.
Yeah, so I think he's probably quite particular about what lighting you have in the room.
I would
as
think
well.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're just so interactive, these works. I mean, also with the acrylic glass, and that's a distinctive choice because it reflects differently to the metal, and often, you know, like polished metal or corrugated aluminium and whatnot. You know, I suppose being so particular about the materials you use, you must have some kind of awareness of their reflective qualities.
Yeah, I think one of the work that's most striking for me in Lauren's show was was it lime green, lime yellow acrylic in the back, and then the
aluminium, wasn't it? Or what
aluminium, I think.
Yeah.
That
was one of the later
one
work from
later
the
one,
80s or
late 70s or 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like the way it plays with the shadow as well.
Yeah.
It's really rather beautiful. Yeah. What do you like so much about KDM Red?
I don't know. I really don't know, but it always was a color that stuck with me. I mean, it's not your prototypical red, really. It's a bit off that.
Yeah, but Judd also really liked colors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's probably his most used color. Certainly all of his early wooden works, they feature that red.
Yeah, it's interesting. You never really see the early works in like colored photograph that much because you always see that historic photo.
But they were all red as far as I can tell.
And there's also like purple in parts of the sculpture.
Yeah.
It will be, I think it's quite striking.
Yeah.
To really make that show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I often felt quite drawn to the early wooden works. I don't know, I think they just have a certain simplicity, maybe also warmth. Maybe there's a certain warmth in that red too. And they're not all perfect. I mean, I suppose his father was a carpenter, as far as I can recall. But they're not always perfectly made. I remember I saw works, you know, some of those like wood blocks, and they just developed condition issues because I felt they weren't made that well.
Why do you think you really like the early wooden works?
I don't know, I just feel...
What are they like?
Maybe they just feel a bit more private. I like them all, frankly, and they all have their distinctive qualities, but there's somehow something slightly more private and less invasive in these objects. Because they don't glow as much.
I see.
Maybe there's also something calming to just have something on your wall. It doesn't stand for anything and it doesn't have any use. And it's just there.
So you mean the ones on the wall? Not
yeah,
the
like I like the wood block that you can
also use
as a wood block.
Print,
I guess they're in a way quite ambiguous objects. I mean, obviously you wouldn't use them now as a wood block for printing because you're not Donald Judd, but yeah.
I just want to come back to talking about this idea of specific objects. What do you think about this concept?
Well, I think it's an interesting concept. It's interesting to precify and differentiate between our ordinary concepts. But I mean, I think there's a sense in which these objects are still sculptures, because I think the way we traditionally use the term sculpture, if you ask a layman, you know, they'll say, oh, it's art and it's, and inhabits three-dimensional space, rather than being flat, or, as flat as, obviously a painting isn't perfectly flat, but flat enough.
Yeah.
So I think there's something slightly pretentious about it, because I think the layman's concept of a sculpture doesn't include that it need be representational. But yet I think it is a useful concept, because of course we can think of sculptures in many different ways. And you know, I mean, I also wonder. You know, I think certainly the Dada artists, I think they did assemblages where, you know, they would just take scrap pieces of junk and stick them together and create a relief or even a sculpture. And I think in most cases, it was more of a performative act. They weren't there to represent something. Maybe if it looked like something, they would name it afterwards. But it wasn't really representational. It was more a performative act as a way of, you know, poking fun at the art establishment, as a way of having fun and whatnot.
Yeah.
And in a way, these are also in some way, to me, they're sculptures. I mean, you could call them specific objects, but
Yeah.
I don't think the concept is that novel. I mean, maybe I'm not disagreeing with him.
I think one thing perhaps is that it's that time in I mean, the time that he came up with this idea could have been useful in that I think it's a time where sculpture is going through a process of stop representing something, that people are no longer doing that anymore.
But couldn't you just call it as such? I mean, like representational and non-representational sculpture.
Yeah, but he just came up with a different word for it. No, I mean, but then the other thing is, I think people probably get remembered more if you have a specific term for a thing as well.
Yeah. But well, what do you think? I mean, maybe let's not talk about the history. Is it a useful concept? I mean, because that's obviously what matters the most. I think it's curious that, you know, many artists, they don't really employ that concept. I mean, even abstract artists, they just do sculptures in the abstract. They don't use the term specific object. It's really, even though Judd applies it to other artists, I don't think it was really, slipped through, you know, common usage, even within the art world.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, I don't think it's probably not that useful now anymore. I mean, I think people already recognize that there are paintings or sculptures that emphasize the thingness of the object itself. But I think at that time, it's just perhaps also a way to emphasize that difference.
Yeah, and I suppose you have to differentiate yourself, and then positing this new kind of entity. It's a quite powerful move.
Yeah, I mean, when people talk about Judd now, they still talk about this term.
Yeah.
It's still an important text to read.
But yeah, I mean, interestingly, you wouldn't apply to other artists who are still working in a similar tradition. Yeah.
Well, so next time we go to Marfa together to see the Judd Foundation.
Gosh, that's a long flight. And you have to fly where to?
I think the problem will be driving. But
oh, yeah. No, good. But yeah,
then
many places to see. Next time, who will we talk about?
Maybe we go for Felix González Torres.
Okay. Looking forward.